What's going on YouTube? This is Boxingwave and we are back with another video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification so you'll be alerted whenever I drop new content, and hit me on all my social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter at Boxingwave10. This topic with the PBC and Showtime has been going on for a long time now. All right. If you really think about it, it's been a big issue since the time that it started. All right, and I mean like Premier Boxing Champions officially was announced, and they did a deal with Fox. All right, now Al Heyman has been working closely with Showtime for years. All right, and a number of different promoters throughout that time. There's been a lot of ups and downs between other promoters, fighters. You know, just like any other promoter. You know, I know Al Heyman is not an actual promoter, but he has had promoters work closely to him. You know, and guys like Richard Schaefer, Lou DiBella, and all of that. We're at a point, though, especially this year. You know, a lot of people have been talking about things going on the inside with PBC and Showtime, about how Showtime is going to Paramount and they really no longer have the money to pay their fighters. You know, same with Al, you know, same with the PBC. You know, PBC came out and the plan was to make free fights on Fox, you know, on prime time and other networks. It wasn't just Fox, you know, but Fox was the major one. You know, we already had fights on Showtime, but you know, when they first started around maybe 2014, 2015, somewhere around then, it seemed like it was a good idea. You know, many of us loved it. It seemed to be a great idea. You know, I know there was a few people out there that was against it from jump, but I was definitely pro PBC when it first started. You know, especially because of the idea of just having fights on prime time. I thought that was good for the sport. And I thought overall, and we're going to get to Broner and all of these other fighters. I'm going to just throw out names throughout this video because I want people to remember certain things, you know, or be educated on certain things. And I know we're at a time where people are very lazy. There's a lot of information out there. You can Google all of this stuff. You can look all of it up. But we're at a time where people go to YouTube and to look for all the information that they want, you know, or choose to hear. So we're gonna bounce around in this video, but I personally love the idea of the PBC when it first started. You know, we know that we had, you know, Top Rank and ESPN, and you know, we had Friday night fights and stuff, but we never had anything that was like, I mean, at least for me growing up, or at least for a very long time, we never had it where boxing fights, like big fights, major fights with names, was just on primetime television, you know, coming on right after the NFL games or before. You know, it was pretty dope to just turn to Fox and see boxing. Now, the UFC has been doing it for a little while now, and I think they've been doing it for good numbers. I don't know if they're still doing it. You know, I haven't been following the UFC like I used to. All right. Not that I have anything against it. It's just that I haven't had time to put so much time into this boxing channel. But I thought it was cool what PBC did. Seeing guys like Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman and Adrien Broner fight on Fox, I thought it was cool. You know, I thought there was a point where Floyd was, you know, I remember Floyd was gearing up to fight Andre Berto. And I thought that would have been cool to put that fight, a Floyd Mayweather fight, on national television. That would have been great. You know, not having it on a subscription-based channel, you know, something like that, or a pay-per-view. I thought that would have been cool. But Floyd, that's not realistic. Floyd is just a little too expensive for that. But overall, you know, over the years, it's just been a problem because it seems like PBC has always wanted to keep things in-house, even when it came to mandatories, even when it came to unifications, all right, fights that the hardcore fans demanded. We're getting that with Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford and we've been getting it for years. We got it with Wilder and Anthony Joshua. You know, there's been plenty of fights that fans really wanted to see. Even Stephen Fulton is getting it now with Inoue. You know, Inoue just won. He's looking to move up. And Inoue is the mandatory for one of Fulton's title, because Fulton hasn't relinquished any of those titles yet. You know, he hasn't vacated any of those titles before moving up to 126. That was what was reported. But anyway, fighters are beginning to speak out. You know, some have spoken out before, and some of them have said things, but they were very cautious. They've thrown out hints of what's going on. We've heard rumors. You know, we've heard from other content creators that seem to be very connected in the sport tell rumors about the PBC or Showtime owing money to fighters, all right, not paying fighters, all right, about how, you know, they're holding fighters back in their careers. It's been a tough year for guys that's fighting on Showtime and PBC. A lot of them have not been active at all. Some of them didn't fight at all this year. Some of them only fought one time. Jamal Charlo, Jerron Boots Ennis. You know, I mean, he's not directly PBC, but this is why I'm including Showtime in this, because there are fighters that are exclusive to Showtime that are just not active enough. Where's the money? Why aren't they getting paid? Recently, Adrien Broner and was a guest on Sean Porter's podcast, The Porter Way. He was a guest there. And Adrien Broner, ever since signing with BLK Prime, he has been very vocal about the issues, the financial issues with the PBC and Al Heyman, about how the money was funny over there, how he had to wait until months after the fight before getting paid, you know, referring to like IOUs and stuff like that. We've heard this before, but it seems like the fighters that have been directly, you know, in contract with Al Heyman, they never really was willing to speak out like that. You know, even when it came to fighting future opponents, they always been kind of quiet. You know, who's next? Oh, we want to just thank Al Heyman. I've heard crazy things like that's part of the contract to say that they must say thank you, Al Heyman, after every fight. I mean, we've been hearing it for years. Even fighters that were with Al Heyman before, like, you know, guys like Floyd or Andre Berto, like years ago, we've heard fighters just always saying, thank you, Al Heyman. Who do you want to face next? Oh, I'm willing to face anyone, any of the top guys. They would never direct, especially if the fighters weren't Al Heyman fighters. If they were fighters that was with Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya or whatever promoter you want to name out there, they were just never direct when it came to calling out fighters, you know. Then there was guys that did come out and speak a little bit, like Gary Russell Jr. He spoke a little bit on his frustrations with the PBC and Showtime. There was fighters that were both signed to Al Heyman in the PBC or Showtime, and they couldn't secure fights. Guys like Gary Russell Jr. and Leo Santa Cruz. Other fighters like recently, I mean, Plant and Benavidez is happening now, or we're getting close to it being announced and being official. But there was a period where the fights demanded that fight. There was history behind the two fighters, and we weren't getting it. You know, now we're getting it because Plant has already lost to Canelo, and he secured the bag with Canelo, which was a good business move for him, all right, but not for everybody. You know, and then I've heard content creators go on about bringing race into the issue, how the Hispanic or the Latino boxers got certain privileges that the black fighters didn't get. You know, Mexican fighters, cards full of Mexican fighters on the undercards, you know, of fighters that were black. We've heard it all over the years. All right, we've heard it all over the years. And I believe a lot of it is true. I do believe that a lot of it is true. But with that being said, with the PBC, what I will say, and the reason why I am a supporter or was a supporter of them, is because I like what they were trying to do in the beginning. I like what they tried to do. It just didn't fall through because it was just financially, it just wasn't sustainable. How do you pay those fighters that amount of money when to broadcast fights on prime time, when the viewership just wasn't enough? People are just not into boxing like that, unfortunately. You know, and I think that it was a good way to try to get people more involved with boxing, but timing is everything. And unfortunately, boxing, people that love boxing, people that I know personally that love boxing, they hate it because of the business, the politics. They can't stand when there are fighters that they are interested in don't get certain fights. And it draws, you can't have it both ways. You can't keep everything in-house when there are fighters across different networks that are considered to be the best or pound for pound level fighters, and you don't have them fight each other. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather really killed it. A lot of things happened in 2015. The PBC was blooming at that time. That's when things started to really get hot, and they started to really pop off at that time. But that year was the year that we got the super fight, the mega fights, the biggest fight of all time. You know, the most financially successful fight of all time. Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. After 5 years of arguing on YouTube about why that fight didn't happen, who was cheating, who was juicing, all of this stuff, finances, all of this stuff. And we get the fight. And the fight was very underwhelming. It was just another regular fight. There was nothing exciting about that fight. People paid thousands for tickets. I remember looking for the tickets, you know. I remember everything. I remember that year. I was out there in Vegas that year. I remember everything. And that fight disappointed. And I think the few people that were left, specifically left for that fight there, you know, that was just barely hanging on to the love of this sport. I think those last few fans that were left, they turned their backs on the sport. You know, and some of them would dip back into the sport when there was some, you know, certain fights like Fury and Wilder, you know, that got people to watch the sport, you know. I think there were certain fighters out there that gets people, and I'm talking about America, mainly because, you know, out in the UK is different. You know, the fans support their fighters in a different level out there. You know, those fighters out there are unknown to Americans, right? But out there, they can pack out arenas. Josh Warrington can probably pack out an arena better than maybe everybody but the top 5 most famous American fighters. You know, top 5, maybe top 10 pushing it. You know, guys like Josh Warrington. You know, and that's not to disrespect Josh. It just goes to show how they support their fighters over the way we do. You gotta be so big. The fight gotta be so big in America for people to support it. You know, to really support it by going to the fights and purchasing the tickets and purchasing the pay-per-views. You know, I just don't. It's just not working. You know, so with that time that the PBC, good plan, and I thought it would have made boxing bigger. And it might have brought in some new fans. I'm sure it did. But the politics, you can't have both. You can't have the politics disrupting fights from being made and try to broadcast it across the states nationally, but we're not getting the quality that we want. You know, we just wasn't getting it. And that's part of the reason why it fell, because people would tune in, but the numbers weren't that great. You know, and the fighters are asking for this amount, this millions, that millions. Are you making money with it? You know, you're probably taking a loss the majority of the time. These these views on these fights weren't that great. Not in comparison to every other show that's being shown on Fox, on these networks. You're not really shining compared to everything else that's on television. You know, I mean, you could still do it now, but I remember looking at the viewership compared to everything else that was on that day for some of these fights, and it just wasn't that good. The numbers weren't that great. So where are we now? Well, they eventually, the PBC, started keeping everything in-house even more because they had their own stable of fighters. It was similar to the welterweight division. I always bring this up because it's something that people tend to forget. But it was the same with Top Rank. When they had a stable of welterweights, they didn't have to deal with Porter and Thurman and all of these outsiders at that time. That wasn't Marquez, Pacquiao, Jesse Vargas, Chris Algieri, Tim Bradley, all of those guys. Top Rank didn't have to deal. Mike Alvarado, Brandon Rios, they didn't have to deal with the PBC because they had their own stable. Ruslan Provodnikov. They kept everything in-house there for that division because they had their own fighters. The PBC came around and they tried to do the same thing. There was a point in the welterweight and the super welterweight divisions where they ran 90% of the names in those divisions, which are very popular divisions over the years. Very popular. Floyd and Manny had fights here. Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, big names. The PBC ran it and they kept it that way. Other fighters on the outside had to suffer a little bit, like Bud Crawford. But this is a practice that's been going on. Didn't start with the PBC. They even thought about making their own belt. When things were well, they were talking about having an actual premier boxing champion, an actual title for each division. They was going to create their own title. But things started to fall apart. And we started, it's just like they started throwing the money around to try to get the big names. They put a lot of money. They invested a lot of money in making a Tyson Fury and Wilder fight. They invested a lot of money to get Canelo to come over to fight Caleb Plant. Stars like that. Paying Canelo like $40 million. I think the purse was like $50 million total. Somewhere around that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the PBC started to fall off. Fighters started to speak out. They've been speaking out for a while. But this year, we got nothing but pay-per-views from them. And there was no reasoning behind the pay-per-views. They was just making everything a pay-per-view. It seemed like they was just trying to scrape up whatever kind of money they can get from the fans. These PBC pay-per-views were out of control this year. Last year too, but this year, out of control. We were going to get them. We kind of understood that we were going to get them with Tank, whoever he fought, Wilder, whoever he fought. Maybe even Spence, whoever he fought. But then it started just everything being a pay-per-view. Started with, I think this year started with Luis Ortiz and Charles Martin. Decent card, good fighters, good heavyweights on that card. Why was it a pay-per-view? It's just everything was becoming a pay-per-view. And on top of that, you still got Top Ranks having pay-per-views for certain fighters. You still have, fighters fighting outside of, those, the Zone started having their pay-per-views, a couple of them. And then you had, other fighters that's fighting on different, like Crawford having his pay-per-view on BLK Prime, or Clarissa Shields having her pay-per-view. It's just too many pay-per-views. But the PBC was drawing so many of them. So where are we at now? Now Adrien Broner's coming out. And he's speaking about the money, how the money wasn't good The money was funny. You know, he spoke about it on the Portaway the other day. You know, everybody's making content, you know, talking about how the PBC was exposed. Well, we already knew all of this. We already knew all of this. But Adrien Broner can speak out about it now. But you got to also remember, you know, and I'm not trying to take away anything from Broner and what he's saying, because I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying. Okay? And he is one of the most outspoken fighters we've ever seen. You know, especially in this generation. So I'm not trying to, you know, deny anything he's saying. I think there's a lot of truth to it. But with Adrien Broner, where's the accountability? With him specifically. Like, he's speaking the most about it. But for him, in his situation, where's the accountability? You know, you make bad life decisions, you know, and you lost the most amount of money, you know, based on what you posted on your social media. You know? At the end of the day, say what you want about PBC, but they gave and they made and created and still created a lot of opportunities. They are still signing fighters. Guys like Demetrius Andrade, who had fought on Showtime at one point. Okay, and has fought on HBO. And has been fighting on the Zone and was signed with Eddie, signed with Matchroom. Left that to go to the PBC. Now, it might have been out of desperation. Maybe that was the only option left. But there are fighters like Rashidi Ellis who are leaving Golden Boy and still going to PBC. There are fighters that are still leaving other places to go to the PBC because they're unhappy where they are. And that goes back to my main point here. Adrien Broner. I remember Adrien Broner said SMD to Rock Nation and Jay-Z. When they ordered him, or they didn't order, but they offered him a $40 million five-year deal. For 5 years, you get $40 million. They offered Keith Thurman money. They offered the Charlo twins money. They offered Demetrius Andrade money. There was a lot of fighters. They were no different from The Zone or from BLK Prime or what SMS with 50 Cent. It's no different from all these other promoters that try to get their foot in the game. They try to get in the game and they try to throw a lot of money out there to pull some of these fighters who were already signed and locked in contract. You know? They tried. Now they pulled they pulled Brian Jennings. I believe they pulled Andre Ward. You know? They pulled some fighters, but they kind of got frozen out because everybody was signed and everybody was sticking to turning down deals that were offered to them. You know, they tried, just didn't work out for them. You know, the timing wasn't right. You know, PBC was just setting up. You know, and they were becoming a heavy player in the game. You know, even though Al was around for a lot longer than that. And it just didn't work out. You know? It just didn't work out. So with all that being said, Adrien Broner speaking out, and everybody's happy because he's speaking on what a lot of us feel we knew. But Adrien Broner, when it comes to him, I think him speaking on it is cool. We hear the message. We hear the message for sure. But coming from him could be a little bitterness. You know, it could be. It could be. You know, because you got offered more money and I'm sure you didn't get paid. When you got offered $40 million in 2015. I'm sure you haven't gotten paid $40 million since 2015. I believe at that time he had already lost to Marcos Maidana. All right, not saying that was the end of his career because it definitely wasn't. Definitely wasn't the end of his career, but you know, he lost to Maidana back in 2013. You know, 2015 he went on to lose to Sean Porter. This is after the deal with Rock Nation that they offered. He fought John Molina after that. He fought Sean Porter after that. All right. You know, he became a champion. He beat Khabib. He fought Ashley Diapane. And then he started to become inactive. You know, and I remember him talking about it. He said, you know, I'm about to fight 3-4 times a year. Over here on the PBC, you think I'm going to fight for that much over there for $40 million? Well, this is the assumption based on what you thought you were going to be making. And I'm not saying he didn't make money. I'm sure he's made some good money with the Manny Pacquiao fight. You know, Mikey Garcia. Some of these fighters, you know, bring in money. You know, but did you make $40 million? Because I saw Broner on Instagram pleading and talking about how much money he needed. And his mental health. And all of that. You can't be telling people, inviting people to your privates, and then crying on Instagram when things are not working out. You know? But there was plenty of fighters that I feel that because of they were being signed with the PBC, I think there were plenty of opportunities for other fighters that didn't happen. I think Wilder would have had great opportunities. And, you know, he made a lot of money with Tyson Fury. So I don't want to take anything away. He gave us a classic trilogy. All right. But at the end of the day, he would have made more money fighting Anthony Joshua and taking that the zone deal. And who blocked that? The PBC. Wilder would have been whatever. And again, he's successful and he's made a lot of money. But I'm sure he would have made more money in that the zone deal. You know, now the PBC didn't always kept everybody. I mean, they let guys like Andy Ruiz, who was recently signed with the PBC, go over there and fight AJ. You know, he pulled off the upset, went in there and lost a rematch. But those were certain fighters in certain periods where they thought the risk was very, you know, really worth it. Andy Ruiz, you know, it's not like anybody was really checking for him at that time. You know, it's a fighter that we all respected, but it wasn't like he was a star at that time. And if there's an opportunity for you to fight AJ, why shut that down? You know? I don't really know. It doesn't look good for the PBC. You know, I don't know what happens from here. You know, they're no longer putting fights on Fox. They're barely putting out any fights on Showtime. You know, and a lot of the fights and the pay-per-views are just, you can't justify any of these pay-per-views, really. You know, a lot of them you can't justify, but they're trying to stay afloat. I don't know what's going to happen. I've made a video before, and I said to you guys, I'm really concerned about the fighters and what's going to happen to them. Guys like Jamal Charlo has been inactive for over a year. He's been inactive for a year and a half now. I'm not saying that's all the PBC for. I don't know what Jamal is doing. He's another fighter that was offered money to go fight Demetrius Andrade. You know, that would have been a unification match, a fight that we should have gotten. It fell through. It seems like almost everything falls through with them. You know? But with all of that being said, PBC did create a lot of opportunities for these fighters. I don't know where they would have been if it wasn't for the PBC or Al Heyman or Showtime. You know, at the end of the day, I'm sure some of these fighters signed because the money was there and they needed it, you know. But we can't sit here and say that if they didn't sign with them that everything would be better. I think for some, yes. I think for others, no. You know, I think certain fighters, they were able to make a lot of money and get great opportunities. You know, Adrien Broner, I mean, you really didn't deserve a fight with Manny Pacquiao at the time, and Al gave it to you. Like, we can't just forget these things. Like, and I know PBC is under attack, and for many reasons they should be, but we can't just like forget these things, you know? Like, remember when that fight was announced and how people felt at that time? On top of that, but Broner didn't fight at all in 2020. He didn't fight at all in 2022, you know? It's like, where's the accountability, man? Is it all PBC? I mean, for you to be this talkative and he's being the most vocal about it more than any other fighter, you probably you have a lot to do with how your career went. And the way he's been talking lately, he's been making it seem like it's just stress from the being with the PBC and how they screwed him so badly. Al gave you a lot of opportunities. You know, you got a Mikey Garcia fight, you got a Manny Pacquiao fight, you know, and it's not like you was doing anything crazy in between that time, you know? Some of it, you gotta say, like, it's on you. Some of it gotta fall on you. And the same with some of these other fighters that have been completely inactive. Is it Al Haymon's fault that Jamal Charlo has not fought in over a year? Is it all Al Haymon's fault? Or does that have something to do with Jamal Charlo? Because Jamel has been more active than him, and I think Jamel should be more active. I don't think we should have waited damn near a year to get the Tim Tszyu fight after he beat Brian Castano in a rematch. So I do believe that these fighters, especially these young guys like that's on Showtime, like a Boots Ennis, they should be fighting. They should be active. They should be fighting 2, 3, 4 times a year. All right, but some of them choose not to. Gary Russell Jr. fought once a year. For how many years? Is that Al Haymon's fault? Because from what I've heard in several different interviews, Gary Russell seemed to have been very comfortable in fighting just once a year. You know, so look, man, all I hope at this point when it comes to the PBC, if they're not going to get saved and bailed out in some way, some form, some fashion soon, financially, and if it is just going to fall apart completely, I just hope that these fighters are going to be able to find a new home and give us some of the fights that we've been asking for. If the PBC is truly done, all right, and Showtime is done, I hope these fighters can find a new home and make more money there. I don't want them to be held and just be stuck inactive. I don't want that. I want fights like Fulton and Inoue to happen. I don't know if Fulton is really, like, everybody's calling him a duck right now. I don't even know if he's in control of that situation. Was it his choice to go up to fight Brandon Figueroa? I mean, you are your own man. Or do you want to stay at 122 and wait for Inoue to move up? Because now it's official. He is your mandatory. And since you haven't vacated your titles, you should be able to fight him. No one should be able to hold you back from taking these fights, including Al Haymon. You know, so with that being said, I do believe a lot of things are the PBC's and Showtime's fault because they don't have the funds. But I think some of these fighters, or many of these fighters, are also responsible for their own careers. Some of them are, especially with the inactivity or the people they choose to fight. You can't tell me, you can't hide behind your promoter all the time and say that, or make it seem or insinuate that you couldn't have this fight because you wasn't allowed to do it. You know, if you're with a promoter or if you're with a manager or an advisor and they're not giving you any of the fights that you want, what's the point of signing with them? You know, especially when you're in a certain stage of your career, especially when you re-sign. You know, it was like when Bud Crawford re-signed with Bob. When he re-signed to Bob, a lot of the PBC and Errol supporters were saying, why did you re-sign with Bob? If you want the Spence fight, you should have came to the PBC. A lot of them said that. Now, eventually, Bud did leave Bob Arum. But I believe he signed with Bob because of the money that he agreed for every fight. He's getting a guarantee of $4 million per fight, whoever he fights. I don't know if the PBC was offering that kind of money to Bud Crawford. I don't believe they were. And I don't believe the other welterweights that was with the PBC was getting paid that much guaranteed per fight. Now at welterweight, they weren't. You know? So, I know I'm kind of all over the place in this video. But I wanted to dip into how we got here. And I'm sure there's plenty of things I forgot, because I'm doing this off the top of the head, all of these topics. But I just want what's best for these fighters overall, including Adrien Broner. I'm glad he got the BOK Prime deal. I just don't like when people make a lot of money and then when things don't work out, they go in on you. You know, and I feel like Adrien Broner has said the most. I mean, even Terrence Crawford has said that he knows fighters he's friends with that is on that side that said to him, make sure the money is right. I think there's a lot of truth. It's just too much talk from fighters. It's just too much talk. So I think there's a lot of truth in it. But as far as like guys like Broner, dude, we have to admit that you were part of the problem of where you are today. You know, at one point, again, you shut other promoters down when the money was there and there was a lot of money on the table. You made those choices and you were disrespectful with it at the same time. All right. So listen, overall, man, I think I said everything that I wanted to say. You know, I don't know what's gonna happen next with the PBC. I just hope that again, I just care for the fighters and I care as a fan to get the best quality fights. You know, and if the PBC is not gonna be around, I just hope that these fighters can find a new place to be and make money and give us good fights. All right. And if they are going to stick around, please make these guys stay factored. Their careers are being ruined by fighting once a year, if that. It just doesn't make any sense. And their legacies are being ruined too because they're not fighting top-notch fighters. All right. I know like a lot of the PBC fans, I read a lot of their comments and they always laugh and joke about how like Eddie Hearn fighters are taking losses and stuff like that. They're taking losses because they're fighting people on their level. That's why. A lot of them are fighting people on their level. Same thing with Bob Arum. A lot of the fighters over there are fighting people on their level. Okay? Hopefully we get Plant and Benavidez. Hopefully we eventually get Wilder and Joshua. We should be able to get it this year at this point. Hopefully we get Bud and Spence. You know, hopefully we get these fights. And we make it where everyone gets paid. You know, I said that to you guys. That contract to Bud is a joke. It's a joke. No guarantee for Spence and Bud. When this is the most talked about fight. It's crazy because there's content creators, whether you're a pro Bud fan or a pro Spence fan, there are content creators that are literally eating off the two of these fighters' name. They literally make no other content but about those two. And they'll sit here and tell you that this fighter is ducking or this fighter is ducking or this, that. You're literally eating off their names. You know? is just crazy to me. But that contract, the fact that those fighters can be talked about this much and they can't even get a guarantee is a joke. It's a joke. I don't know how anyone can defend that and make sense of that. Especially after the Wilder and Joshua situation, which was just a complete reverse of what's happening here with Spence and Bud. In this case, Spence is Joshua in the situation. And Wilder is Bud Crawford. But I've pointed this out in older videos. All right. All right, I'm out of here, man. Y'all have a good one. Kazuto Yoka and Joshua Franco breakdown will be coming soon. And I hope you guys have a happy holidays. You know, I don't know how much content I'm going to be making in the next couple of days, but I did want to speak on this because a lot of, I got a couple of comments of people asking me to speak on it. I know it's a hot topic. I know I see a lot of people talking about it. But, whatever. I just hope the PBC to get their shit together or let these fighters go, release these fighters and let them go and have better careers elsewhere, All right, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one. And make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, and all that stuff. Peace.